I'm not qualified to be a father. In my opinion, I'm not qualified to be a father. Was not at that time.
And you've never regretted.
You've been able to take that decision to say, no, I don't want to be a father because I'm not qualified to do that. And so as a result of that, no, I haven't brought any new beings into existence.
And you've never regretted that, Peter?
No, because I've had my whole life to be able to look at it and say, how do I make the best of what I have in my life? Despite the world being a bad place and all the other things you might say about it.
Yeah. Okay, that's Peter and Bryanston. Prof, I'm just thinking, you know, people who would overestimate the quality of life, or your motivational speakers, preachers, and many other people who encourage people to be positive, reach for your dreams. You know, that kind of language. If we're arguing that all our lives are very bad and generally much worse than we think, but isn't the counter argument that it's because of things that mankind have done that our lives are much worse than we think? So if we live, we have an opportunity to change all of that.
Well, I certainly think that humans have contributed their fair share of misery to the planet.
I
more
think
than
so.
Their fair share of misery to the planet. But I think that even if we did everything right, nature is still constructed in such a way that there's going to be an immense amount of suffering. It's just unavoidable. It's written so deeply into the structure of sentient life that it's unavoidable. We can minimize it or maximize it, and I certainly think we should minimize the amount of pain that there is, but we can't come even close to eliminating it all.
Let's go to Karen, and David Klatzo is also on the line from Rondebosch. We'll talk to you in just a moment. Karen in Orange Grove, hi.
Hi. I find the subject absolutely fascinating. And while I do think that there probably should be fewer humans on the planet, I just wanted to refer to the book Conversations with God. I don't know if you've ever read it, where said that God could only experience existence having a body. So whatever you experience in your life is part of God experienced existence, and you've got to experience existence. So whatever it is, whether it's suffering, accidents, pain, wonderful things, abundance, all of those kind of things are just part of the experience. So it's your experience of existence. So everyone has to experience things and experience them to their fullest to understand the point of existing at all.
Are you better off, though, having experienced all those things?
I don't think it's a point of being better off. It's a point of the fact that you have to experience it.
Why?
Because God needed to experience it. The beginning of the universe that was nothingness had to experience the fact that it existed, and the only way that it could ever experience existence at all was through being solid, being existing, being a body, being something.
But you've got to believe in God for you to take that kind of approach, isn't it?
I mean, God is I'm not talking about God as a father figure, kind of religious figure. I'm talking about that existence that was nothingness before there was existence.
Okay.
Well,
Prof?
That's where I think there's some confusion. I think it's a common confusion because before anybody comes into existence, they aren't. And so there is nobody there who needs to experience anything. There's nobody there who needs to be brought into existence so as to obtain certain benefits or so as to understand anything better.
Just to die again after all of that.
Exactly.
All right, interesting. Let's go to David Klatzo in Rondebosch. Good morning to you.
Hello, Rudy.
Hi.
Hello, David.
Morning.
I enjoy the thought of your conversation as much as I enjoyed your inaugural lecture, and I must say that it is a very courageous sort of concept to tackle like this, particularly publicly. But and I'm very pleased that your father didn't have the same views, David. However, what I would like to say is this, is that pleasure and pain are really two sides of the same coin. And that I think that it's very difficult for me to conceive of one without the other. If life were one unending orgasm, I have no doubt that you'd be begging for it to stop. And I think that quite often the vicissitudes of life create the strength which creates an enjoyment in the rest of life. And I think that it might be just a little negative to see life in terms of a purely selfish concept of am I going to get anything out of it, or is life mundane, or whatever. Life is not mundane. Life, as far as I'm concerned, with all the pleasures and with all the pain of having existed, has really created a sense of unending enjoyment for me overall, if I looked at it.
It's what I was talking
about. Dark moments, but there've been some incredibly wonderful moments.
It's exactly what I was
And
talking about, David, the dichotomy surrounding our existence, the joy and the pain of it all.
Absolutely. There are two sides in my view. I don't think you can ever have only joy without experiencing pain. I think that the two have to be coexistent.
But are you not better off not having experienced that pain? I guess that's what it is.
I think ultimately, if you look at it from an individual point of view, clearly, but if you look at it from a general point of view of the organism as a whole, I think that it's a wonderful theoretical situation, but it could obviously never exist, because then mankind as we know it would come to an end.
It's David Klatzo. Yes, Prof?
There are many ideas that have been raised. First of all, it wasn't me who said that our lives are mundane. I think it was one of the callers. So my argument's not based on that premise. Secondly, I'm not sure that pain and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. I think that it is possible, firstly, to have pain without pleasure. There's some lives that are filled with unmitigated pain. There's just no pleasure. They don't last long enough for there to be any pleasure, and they're just painful. The other point that Dr. Klatzo made was that we can't have only pleasures. But that's exactly my point, is that given the nature of life, you can't live without having pain. And I think that pain is all gratuitous. He also suggests that this could never be because it would mean that there are no more humans. But the sad news, presumably for him, for me, the good news, is that there will come a time when there are no more humans on the planet. Our species is going to go the route of every other species. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know if it's going to be sooner or later. But one thing I know for absolute sure is that the later it happens, the more suffering there's going to be.
I want us to get into a longer discussion about that. It sounds to me that you hope one day, Prof, that all humans and other animals must just go extinct.
Well, of course, there are different ways of going extinct. I'm not recommending killing anybody or any animal. I don't want anybody to be killed off. But I think it would be better, all things considered, if we died off. And that is, in other words, if we didn't replace the current humans with new humans.
Let's take a break. We'll take more of your calls in a moment.
Talk Radio.
Just to give you an idea of Professor David Benatar's book, he is the head of philosophy department at the University of Cape Town. The book is called Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence. In chapter 3, for example, he defends the idea that even the best lives are not only much worse than people think ordinarily, but also very bad in themselves. He argues by appealing to empirical research that people's self-assessments of the quality of their lives is, I use the plural, right? Self-assessment is unreliable. Let's say self-assessment is unreliable. So the way we assess our lives, the quality thereof is unreliable. And in this chapter, he goes on to argue that the quality of human life is judged to be bad according to all three of the most common views of quality of life: hedonistic view, the desire fulfillment view, and the objectivist view. The rest of the book defends a number of important practical implications of his thesis. So you may want to grab a copy so we can grapple with all of these. Let's go to David in Kailami. Hi.
Hi. There are 2 points I want to make. The one is sort of one from mindfulness, that a lot of wisdom comes through working through things that may be unpleasant. But the more important one comes down to, it's the whole question of consciousness. And maybe I can give you the example of 2 cats that I had. Well, one my uncle had, and it was from you, when it was about a year old, it was in an accident, a dog bit it. It was paralyzed from the waist down. We put it on a little trolley, and it was quite happy, purring, everything. One of my cats got blinded, and within 2 days he was jumping around the place. So I think a lot of our conception of what is pain or displeasure comes from our consciousness of it.
Yeah.
So similarly, the professor is working in an area with, from a scientific milieu, or a certain position of consciousness that perceives certain things to be painful or unpleasant and others not. And to a large extent, I think it's the human consciousness and awareness of what is pain, what is displeasure, that creates a lot of that, especially in a psychological level. So, to my mind, if somebody has a psychological appreciation of my life being pleasant or there being worthwhile things in my life, then they factor that makes that pleasant for the person. I don't know that we can really compare so-called epistemological or empirical proofs to say that you're wrong. You think your life is pleasant, but it actually isn't pleasant.
Okay, that's David and Kailami. Lovely call. Prof, I'll tell you what, can I take a few more calls and then we can respond to everyone all together as well as wrap up the people who've been holding on for so long. Sipo in Midrand, hi.
Hi, the name is Steph, actually, Rudy. I understand the concerns that have been raised about our general quality of life, but there's a statement that when you start a new life, you're actually starting a new sense of suffering. I don't agree with. We can't really say now we're going to discourage starting a new life because of the possibility of suffering. I'm of the opinion that the value of life is actually realized in the meaning of life. So the sooner you find the meaning of your life, the sooner you can actually realize the value. And how much suffering was incurred in that lifetime or that existence becomes really trivial.
Okay, that's Sipo in Midrand. Ligao in Edenvale, hi.
Hello, I wanted to find out from the professor what criteria he's using to determine how worse our lives are, because I'm thinking there are some things that you can experience in life that can put you in a position whereby you become oblivious to the negative things that you experience in life, you know. I don't know if that's clear.
Okay, Prof?
Okay, well, that question and the first one are actually connected. The criteria that I'm using are actually three different criteria because they're three different ways in which philosophers have assessed quality of life. The one is based on how much pleasure there is in a life. The one is on the extent to which one's desires are fulfilled. And the third one is the extent to which one's life meets certain objective conditions. And what I try to do is I try to step through each of those different theories and show how, irrespective of which of those views you take, our lives are nonetheless very bad. Now, to connect that to the first questioner, he's quite correct that if you have an optimistic view on life and you view your pains in a certain way, that there's an extent to which they're made less bad than they otherwise would be. But what he's actually describing is a phenomenon that's known as adaptation. And what that means is that something bad happens to you, you actually adjust to it, and you now no longer expect to have anything better than that. And that means that a lot of the bad things in our lives we actually overlook because we've adapted to them. There's very good evidence, for example, that people who are disabled in accidents, at first their self-assessment of the quality of their life dips. They think their lives have now become much worse. But they adapt to the new condition very often, and then they return to the sort of baseline view of how good their life is afterwards. And this applies to many, many bad things that happen to people. So if you look at how their lives are actually going, it's not very good, but they've adapted in such a way that they think it's better than it really is.
You're listening to Reedy Direko.
Some SMSs very quickly. This life is spirit, continues into another life. Craig says there's life drive and a death drive is day and night. Both are valid. We must try to have harmony between the two. A very good discussion. Thanks. Reedy, the professor is right. There is futility in existence. We're better off if we don't experience some of this pain. One says, I swear I've never heard such an amount of hogwash. That's Innocent in Protea Glen. Regarding your last caller, how many millions must die of hunger before God gets enough of the experience? I like the fact that we are grappling with, I use the word grappling, so every second person is using grappling. I actually hate it. But anyway, Professor, I must be honest. I'm actually surprised at the number of people who have sent emails and calls in support of your argument. I mean, is this the sign of the times? I don't know. I actually thought that your views were so controversial that many people will be slamming you. There are some who are critical, and that's fine. All of them should articulate their views. But I'm taken aback by the number of people who are saying, actually, it's true.
I must say I'm a little surprised too how many people have called in favor. I think there may be an explanation for that. It might be that these sorts of views are so rarely discussed in public and they so frowned upon that this opportunity on the radio to talk about them has brought people out of their shell and enabled them to speak about ideas that ordinarily are taboo.
And I won't forget that. You're saying those who never exist cannot be deprived.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes, you wanted to say something else?
I wanted to respond to one of the earlier callers who said that he disagreed that when we create a new being, a new human being, we're creating a new center of suffering. He said we shouldn't be worried about a mere possibility of suffering. But in fact, it's absolutely guaranteed that every person that we bring into existence will suffer in some or other way. And another caller of yours spoke about the meaning of life, and I would just say that for your life to have meaning, of course, you have to have a life. And so it's not problematic if those who never exist don't have any meanings in their lives because they don't have any lives.
All right, Professor, I really have loved chatting to you, and I'm sure we'll do so again. Good luck with the book, eh?
Thanks very much. Nice to chat to you and your callers.
Thank you so very much. And those of you who are SMSing, the book is called Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence by Professor David Benatar.